Success is something we have all strived for in our own ways, but lately, its meaning feels beautifully renewed. In this new era of work, success isn't measured only by titles or financial goals. It's about feeling fulfilled, aligned, and connected to what truly lights us up. And in today's episode, we are diving into what it really means to redefine success, exploring how our values, priorities, and sense of achievement are evolving in today's ever changing world of work. And joining me today is a powerhouse in personal development and a master coach, Megan Bunnell. She is a transformational coach, speaker, and founder of Tantalum Coaching, a platform dedicated to empowering women to break through limitations, rediscover their potential, and create lives filled with purpose and joy. Megan works with high performing working moms, especially those in corporate or entrepreneurial leadership who are ready to stop shrinking, stop settling, and step fully into their power. Megan, welcome to the show, and I'm looking forward to this conversation today.
Well, thank you for having me, as am I. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you on my show. And as I said, I have been really looking forward to a conversation. Last time when we had our discussion, I was very confident that you would be the right guest for my next episode. So thanks for being on my show.
Absolutely.
Now, you have spent so many years helping people grow in their careers, and your perspective on what success means has really evolved with the changing world of work. I would love to start there. How has your own understanding of success shifted over the time?
Well, I think if you go back even just a decade ago, I thought that back then success was really about achievement, right? That came with very um, clear things that you have achieved, a title, an income, what you own, your house, being the busiest person in the room, even. And if you asked me how I was doing, and the same with my clients, a very common response then would have been busy, but it was almost like a trophy. Right? Like it was impressive that you were accomplishing so many things, that you got so many promotions, that you had a specific salary. And I would say that that is definitely shifted as my focus has shifted to helping those clients truly find joy in these amazing lives that they've built and recognizing that success does not stop with what you've achieved. That's a piece of it for sure. But if you don't feel confident, joyful, fulfilled with all of those titles or the trophies, that you've collected, then is it really successful? And so I think now success, the goal for myself, for my clients, and I think for everybody should be very different. Success is really when life looks good and feels good, when you are loving it, when it is filling your heart. And it can show up in a lot of different ways that I think we ignored before, in your family, in your friends, even in yourself, without needing a nap, right? Without you feeling burnout, without you at the end of the day hitting the pillow and dreading doing it again tomorrow. And so it really does come with the feeling of being present, knowing who you are and being the best person that you are in all your given areas and aligning the way that you're spending your time with your priorities. I think alignment is a big piece of that, not accomplishment, which is what I think it was years ago.
I'm pretty sure our listeners will definitely connect with this because, yes, as you said, years ago, the definition of success was altogether different. It was about titles, it was about, as you called out, salary. But now it's more of our alignment, what we really feel good in our life, how well are we aligned with our own values. And that's what success in today's times means. Now,
Hmm.
I would love to hear how your own understanding, as you said, it has evolved over the time. Uh, what does success mean to you in this phase of your journey, and what experiences or turning points have most influenced that shift in your perspective?
Yeah, I think success now shows up when I am fully present, doing exactly what I feel like I should be doing in those moments, authentically and in alignment with me and my life. So it's not just about me, because I have children and I have a husband and I have a job and I have my clients. And so I think that success feels to me like I can show up in any given moment true to myself and who I can be, and that I want to be right there, fully present in that moment. And I think a pivotal moment for that, there really were two. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Taking us back, I guess it was probably about 10 years ago. I had an incredible job with a corporation, a really large one in the United States. Well, it's international. And I absolutely loved what I did. But it did require that I was gone a lot. And I had just had a baby. He was about 5 months old. And I thought I had it figured out. My husband and I had, schedules that were kind of opposite from each other. So somebody was almost always with him. And we had one other lady that was helping us, and she was amazing. And I just felt he's taken care of. We're taking care of our family. Everything is good. And I get home from work one day, and I think I got home probably about 6 o'clock, and our urgent care where we lived was closed. And when I walked in, Laura was her name. She said, "I think you need to take him in. Wyatt has not been doing well today, and I think something's wrong." And I thought, oh my gosh, okay, let's go pack him up. Urgent care it's like just about to close, right? And so I like run and I'm like, "Can you take one more, please? My baby's sick." And they said, "Okay, we can take one more. Come on in. The doctor hasn't left yet." Okay, great. So we go in the room and the doctor starts asking me, um, "How long has he had a fever?" I don't know, right? "Has he thrown up today?" I don't know. How have his bowel movements been? I don't know, because I haven't been with him all day long. And the day before that, I worked 11 hours. And the day before that, I worked 8 hours. And so I truly don't know. And that to me was a big slap in the face. Like, what are you doing? You're incredibly successful at work. You're making all the money, you have all the titles, and yet you don't know a thing about what's been happening with your son for the last 3 days. And I said, something needs to change. And I literally put in my resignation the next day to figure out something else. I loved that job. I loved it so much. It probably was my favorite job until now that I've ever had. But that was a big pivotal moment that clearly my success, as far as my family was concerned, meant nothing. My accomplishments were not at all aligned with what was really important to me. So that was one. So I shifted. And before I had that job, I was in education, and I went back into education. It's much more flexible. And I ended up, this is 4 kids later, right? Or 3 kids later, I'm on my 4th kid. And she was born. And at the time I had a remote job, and I thought, this is perfect, right? I can be home with her all day. I have somebody that can bring me to her when she's ready to nurse, when she's having a hard time. This is great. But what that led to is that I wasn't quite finishing my job during the day because I was being interrupted by the most important thing in my life, right? And so then when I'm off of work, now all of a sudden I'm not present with them because I'm trying to steal back 5 or 10 or 15 minutes to do these little things for work that I didn't get done then. And I'm staying up late doing the same thing and getting up early in the same thing. And I was just burned out. Nobody got the best of me, not my work, not my family, and certainly not me. And I think that was the second time that I really got slapped in the face, and I quit. I mean, I finished that year because that's the right thing to do, but I quit, and I've never gone back. And what I recognized is that success to me truly, truly is everybody getting the best of me in that moment, which varies day to day, circumstance to circumstance, but that my time is spent, my energy is spent, my power is spent in alignment with what's important to me. And that's not my salary, and it's not my title, and it's not who I work for. It's my family, and it's giving back in a way that I know how to give back. And so, yeah, those were, I think, the two biggest pieces. And during both of them, I was incredibly successful, and nothing about it felt successful. And that's the truth, is that you can build a beautiful life on paper and still be miserable living it. And I really do feel like success is when the life that you've built actually feels like yours.
Wow, that's such an insightful way to put it, and thanks for sharing those experiences with our audience. I think many of us can relate to that evolution, how success in our younger years often feels like a checklist of achievements, but honestly, over time, it becomes more about alignment, balance, and as you called out, inner commitment. When you think about the idea of success today, how would you describe in a way that goes beyond the traditional markers of titles or metrics? What does success look like when it's defined through fulfillment or the legacy one leaves behind?
Yeah, I think, life is really, your perception of life is 100% based on how you feel. And you know that that can be true, and you can find evidence for that left and right, because two people can have a very similar life and one person hates it and one person loves it. And the truth is that life is, as far as feelings go, emotions go, 50-50, right? So half of life is negative emotions or not great ones. And then half of life are great emotions. And I think that when you really get down to success in life, it's when you have the control, the power, and the willingness to feel anything. So you're not hiding from something. You're not in burnout trying to cover it up. You're not in stress. You're not in overwhelm, but you really do have the power to get in touch with your emotions, be willing to feel anything, and be willing to shift, even if it's micro shifts, what you need to, so that when you feel things that are not in alignment with what you want, you make those changes. And so if you're constantly burned out, if you're constantly exhausted, if you're constantly so tired that you wish each day was only 12 days long and you could sleep the rest of the 12 hours, if you feel like you're missing out because you're making choices that are pulling you from what's most important, um, being willing to adapt, to shift, to pivot, I think that's success. Because what your life looks like today, if you feel in alignment and you love it, is going to change a year from now. And so being in tune with that, being aware and being willing to grow, to change, to adapt, I think that's really what success is. And work is a part of that, right? It really is. I mean, we spend hours of our lives working. That's an important piece. So doing something you love or learning to love what you do is certainly a piece of it. But you cannot work to live if you want to have a life that's in alignment. And so, what does living look like outside of that? What are your choices? What are your habits? Um, I think that's really what success is being in touch with your feelings and willing to make micro shifts to be more in alignment with the life that you want to feel.
Well, I really love the concept of those micro shifts that you called out. And Uh, I really like how thoughtful your approach is. Small habits like that can definitely make a huge difference. So, thanks for emphasizing on that.
Hmm.
Now, in your experience, how does authenticity impact the way professionals grow or find satisfaction in their work? I think this is something every corporate individual is going through at this moment.
Yes. No, I agree. I think first of all, authenticity really, when you're talking about it in a professional environment, there's two pieces to that. There is the individual piece. So you as an employee, you as the person working for or above or whatever people, you as the individual. And then I think there's the corporation. So I think that corporations need to be very intentional about the culture that they want to create. And some corporations, they intentionally work their employees incredibly hard, drive, and don't plan on keeping them forever. And if that's the culture that they're creating, being aware, being honest about that, knowing that you are only going to get the best of any single individual person for a short term, right? If you want to grow a company that is keeping their employees and those employees are growing and developing with the company, I think recognizing what culture it is that you want to create is important. So, what are those values that you want to emphasize and stand behind? I think for leaders, then following that in the corporation, because it's not about being loud and it's not about managing people, it's about leading them. So being that example of what those values are for that culture, for that corporation. And that I feel like we could talk about forever. But I think individually, authenticity really comes down to understanding what your personal needs, values are in an unshakable way. This is who I am. These are my values, AKA my filters, and they become your GPS for fulfillment. That shows you how to show up in any given situation without you constantly rerouting. And when you show up as your true, authentic self, that is what allows you to be your best, give your best, not waste energy on pretending, on performing. And so you can truly use all of your energy and all of your power on the tasks that you have on hand. And, an example of this is I spent years being what I now jokingly call the good girl, right? Doing what was expected, keeping the peace with everybody, saying yes to everything. But it cost me. And so when I finally got honest about that, I stopped managing everybody else's perception and opinion. And I started building a business and a life that actually matched who I am, what my values were. And it is effortless when I show up because I know who I am. I'm being true to that. Everybody knows what they're going to get from me. There's no variation day to day. And so I think that that authenticity to yourself isn't necessarily about being loud or rebellious. It's about being rooted. So when you stop performing and you start aligning, everything gets simpler and way more powerful. It's that permission that allows your soul to just exist. And that's what you've been waiting for. But it comes from within 100%.
I think a lot of leaders need to hear this, and I definitely believe that authenticity is such a powerful yet underrated quality at workplace. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I have often noticed that when people feel safe enough to bring their authentic self to work, the way they connect, lead, and even create, the transformation is completely visible. And honestly, it's so
100%.
encouraging to hear you emphasize that, because I think it's so many professionals today are yearning for that kind of genuine alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, diversity and inclusion are often spoken about at a strategic level, but I would
Mm-hmm.
like to hear your take on what real inclusion feels like in, say, everyday interactions, or if you can share an example of what it looks like when people genuinely feel valued and respected in their workplaces.
Yeah. So I think I want to take a step back and first emphasize and empower anyone that's hearing this to know that regardless of your title, you are a leader right where you are. And the reason I say that is that you have an impact on people right where you are. You have an impact on people above you, on your coworkers that work side by side with you, on people that you are supervising. There is no title that can give you a leadership permission. You are a leader because you do have impact. And so, with that in mind, I would love anybody that is hearing this to really take to heart that you individually can change the way that you're having an impact. And I think that inclusion is so important. It's not, in America, a DEI statement. It's a daily behavior. It's about being curious instead of judgmental. It's about making connections with people as a person so that in the workplace, when you have challenges, you're working together instead of against each other. It's about asking questions. It's about trusting and being vulnerable, whether that's giving away tasks or asking for people's opinions. It's about really being curious when you get this hint, and we do this as humans all the time. We get a hint of judgment against other people, and usually it's because we don't understand something and we assume, right? We do that all the time. And so I think getting curious just about who a person is. And I'll give you an example for something that I had experienced. So I used to work in a school as a principal of a program, and I had a teacher that was late almost every day. Now, as a principal, that's a really big problem, right? Because I have now students that are unsupervised when a class was supposed to start. So every single day, I had to find somebody to go cover her class until she was there. Now, as a human and as her boss, my initial reaction was, why in the world can you not get to work on time? Right? Like, how hard is it to possibly set your alarm 20 minutes earlier so that you can get here on time? That's my initial reaction, right? And I think that that's where you need to ask questions and get curious. And so I had tried a couple of different things, very leadership esque. I had filled out a form, writing her up. I had reminded her that she needed to be there. And finally, one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a sub for her on us, on the school, not on her. And I'm just going to sit and talk with her. And I just asked about her life and asked about her mornings and asked how things were going with her. And it completely changed my perception of what was going on. So, as it turned out, she had a little kid that was incredibly sick, that could not, like, permanently incredibly sick, had a big disability, that only slept 2 or 3 hours a day. Her husband worked at night so he could be with the kiddo during the day while she was at work because the kiddo could never be left alone. And so she was functioning on 3 or 4 hours of sleep on any given day. And if her husband was ever a minute late for work, that meant minute late home from work. That meant that she was that minute late to work. And there was nobody that they could find to cover that gap, to do the thing, to whatever. And all of a sudden now, I have empathy, right? I have sympathy for her situation. I see her as a human instead of somebody that's intentionally being late to work because they're irresponsible. And that changed everything. And that allowed us to really dive into potential solutions. That allowed me to care for her and allow her to be seen and known. And that, I feel like, is inclusion. And it shouldn't matter what your gender, what your race, what your background is as far as your experience. We are all just humans trying to accomplish tasks, projects, reach goals. And I think when you allow yourself to get curious about who you're working with, you allow them to be seen and known, the way that you can work together, the solutions you can find would blow out of the water what you could have done before. And I think that that's truly what inclusion is, where people can show up as themselves without fearing that it's going to cost them credibility, without fearing, or even without knowing that they're going to go to work invisible. One of the most powerful phrases that a leader can say, I think, is, help me understand your perspective. And you are all leaders out there. Use that. When there is a judgment that you feel in your head, when you don't understand something, help me understand your perspective, and then open your mind to hear it, because that sentence builds bridges. Diversity gets people into the room, right? But inclusion is what lets them breathe and work there.
That is so relatable. Many a times we just pass on the judgment without even having the perspective that you spoke about the incident uh, that we had discussed just now. To me, inclusion is not only about big organizational goals, but also about those small, meaningful actions that
Mm-hmm.
actually make people feel, visible, valued, and respected. And
Yes.
I have seen how just being acknowledged or listened to or invited into a conversation can completely change someone's sense of belonging. And the way you have described definitely captures the human side of inclusion. So, thanks for sharing that experience with the audience here.
Of course.
With remote and hybrid work becoming such a central part of modern life, how do you think this shift has influenced the way people measure their value or sense of accomplishment?
Oh, I think it's had a massive impact. And you know what's funny? Before, we're going back years now. Let's not date myself too much. But I remember when I was in, let's say, high school,
Hmm.
and I wanted to talk with a friend. I couldn't drive yet, let's say. And so school was out. I was at home. Maybe it was the weekend, and I wanted to talk to a friend. I would pick up that phone on the wall with the cord. I don't know if you can relate or if you're a lot
Yes,
younger than
yes.
I am. And I could talk to that friend for hours. And I felt connected and I couldn't see her, right? And I couldn't touch her. And yet I recognized that on the other side of that line was a human that I knew, that I loved, that I cared for, and that I trusted that what she was saying, was true. And I think we forgot that that's possible. And I think that we have allowed ourselves to use our screens as a buffer to the human being on the other side. And I think it has had a massive impact because you can't see emotion as well because it's all through text, chat, Slack, email, quick little Zoom meetings here or there. And I think that the way around that is intentionally finding the human on the other side, reminding yourself that you're a human on this side, which means they're a human on that side. And I think being intentional about asking questions to get to know that person just a little bit. And it really doesn't take that much time. It doesn't take that much time to check in with somebody. It doesn't take that much time to put the agenda aside for a second and get to know the other person. And now all of a sudden, it's just like going back to talking to that best friend on the phone. It doesn't matter if it's over text. It doesn't matter if it's over the phone. You know who's on the other side that you're connecting with. And all of a sudden, that's a human. And so your human behaviors kick in, and that's where work accelerates and teams grow. And so in those hybrid and remote programs, if you are that person that is in charge of people's time, spending time, not a lot, but to make those connections is going to allow your team to really feel seen, heard, valued, and then the effort they're going to bring and the way that they'll treat each other in every digital way, right? Whatever the format is going to improve tenfold. If it's hybrid, winning because you have that opportunity to be in person. So give them that time to connect, to get to know each other. And if you're not in charge of people's time, you certainly are in charge of a little bit of your own. Reach out, ask, connect. You can't expect somebody else is going to want to do the same, but you can start that process. You can be
Taking,
that example. Yeah.
yeah,
And
taking
so
that
I'm not sure if that yeah. And I don't know if that answered your question exactly, but it's had a huge impact. And there has to be something that we intentionally do to fix that.
think many people have realized that value isn't just measured by how visible we are in office, but
Hmm.
the outcomes and the balance we create, and how you have emphasized on having those intentional conversations, because hybrid setup has definitely changed the trajectory of human connection. Um, in times when pace of change feels constant, what do you think really helps professionals to stay grounded and connected to what truly matters?
I think in work and in life, transitions can be brutal, right? Somebody told me something a long time ago, though, that really shifted my perspective on change. And they said to me, and this is probably a quote from someone, I don't know, but it was a teacher that had told me, they told me, if you make a friend of change, you'll have a friend for life. And that really hit me as a smaller, younger person. But it definitely hits me as an adult now because transitions are brutal. But they also are the birthplace of reinvention, right? Of things that are new. And so I think anytime that there is change, I think you need to build your new purpose, the new team, the new project through small, consistent actions. Part of that is showing up as you. Part of that is being vulnerable, being curious, asking a ton of questions so that there's less unknown. Because that's what's scary about change, right? It's the unknown factor. And so getting to know as much as you can, but then also just accepting that things aren't meant to stay the same. And so finding in those changes what you love, what you're excited about, and allowing yourself to focus on that, to really feel that instead of the fear of the unknown. And here's the crazy thing about transitions is that people go into them and they're like, everything's changing, right? Like it's so dramatic sometimes. Everything's changing. It's so scary. What didn't change is you. What didn't change is that person, those skills, those values that you're bringing, right? What didn't change is that things need to be done, tasks need to be accomplished. It might be a new system, it might be a new company, It might be a new team that you're on, but the whole general flow doesn't change. And so finding the familiar, finding those things you're excited about, and accepting that change is not always bad and is constant. I think that allows your brain to not freak out, right? Because that's what happens in transition is our nervous system freaks out because we don't know things. So find those things you do know. Find those things you are excited about and calm your brain, calm your nervous system so that you can approach it as your authentic self with the confidence, calm confidence that you can have, and ask a ton of questions so that those unknowns become less and less and less.
Okay. I was
There you
saying,
are.
I really love the way you put it, where you call out that no, it's very easy to get swept up in the pace of change and lose traction. And I think a lot of us
Mhm.
are learning that success in today's world is definitely not about keeping up with everything, but knowing what to hold on to. What are your thoughts
Yes.
on that?
I think that's 100% accurate. And that's the idea behind being intentional. And I purposefully, intentionally, um, do that with courage and thought, like really spend time being intentional in general in almost anything that I do. But I think that that's an intentional choice to choose what you're focusing on, to choose what you're holding on to, because our brain, the most powerful tool you have, our brain works best when you filter things for it with intention. If not, it goes awry, right? And that's where you freak out. That's where you get anxiety. That's where, I mean, there's a lot. So if you can intentionally hold on to those things that you know are good, safe, sure, truth, then you can have the calm confidence about the rest of it. So I think you're right on with that one, 100%.
Okay, so now that brings me to the next question about boundaries. What are some
Hmm.
of the boundaries or habits that have helped you preserve your energy and sustain your motivation over the time? This is my favorite question for you.
Oh, boundaries. First, I think that boundaries is such a hot topic word right now. Like it's a buzzword. Really, I think people need to understand that boundaries are for you and not for anybody else. I think sometimes people think they're setting up boundaries for other people. They're for you, 100% for you. And I think that there's a lot of confusion over what are the right boundaries? Where do I even start with boundaries? Great question. You start by figuring out where you're leaking your energy, your good emotion, your power. So really do an audit on yourself. Where are you saying yes where you should say no? And what is that yes costing you? So I was just working with a client yesterday and I've been working with her for a long time. This has been a huge shift in her, but she loves what she does for work. And so it's very difficult to stop. She doesn't have kids. She has a husband. She has fur babies at home, but she loves working and she easily found herself working 12, 16 hours a day because she loves it. Okay, that's a good yes, right? Because she loves it. But what is she saying no to? She's saying no to that relationship with her husband. She's saying no to relationships with her friends. She's saying no to really filling herself back up so she can give her best at work. So even though she loved it, she found herself being burnt out and being stressed, even though she loved it. And so I think finding where are you leaking? Where are you saying yes, where you should be saying no? And that can be how people are treating you. And that can be how you're giving your time. And that can be what you're willing to do for other people. That can be who you're willing to show up as. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can leak that. And then consciously, intentionally drawing a boundary for yourself so that you're aware when someone crosses it, including yourself. And boundaries are incredibly important to allow yourself to stay authentic and calmly confident in that person that shows up every day. And you have to be honest with yourself first before you can be honest with anybody else. So with this lady that worked so many hours, her excuse was, I love it so much. I'm doing so great. But the truth was, it was too much. And what she was giving up because of it was too much. She didn't want to do that. So lay out your priorities and then draw those lines. And boundaries, this is another, I think, myth about them. They're different for every person. right? Boundaries are not the same per person. Think of the boundary you would have with someone that you have an intimate relationship with versus a boundary for somebody that you've just met, right? They're different boundaries as far as what they can say to you, what you allow them to do as far as touching you, right? So a boundary is no different with any boundary you draw. That's no different for every person, every circumstance. You have to be aware of where your boundaries. And how do you know? You get uncomfortable, you get resentful, you get upset, you get burned out. Okay, you didn't draw your boundary. And so I think it's some inner work you have to do to find those leaks, find those values, find your priorities, and draw those lines. And then you just hold them. And sometimes you say them out loud because they need to be said out loud. And sometimes you just hold them yourself. So I personally, and I think a lot of women get this, I am very careful with the way that I allow people to speak to me because I have an expectation for myself and for people around me of how we treat other humans, period, myself included. And I will just walk away. And I will calmly say, I am not going to have this conversation when you're using those words or when you're using that tone. I am more than willing to talk to you when you can, and then insert whatever here, right? When you can more calmly speak with me. So let me know when you're ready. And I will walk away. I don't need to sit in a heated conversation. I don't need you to say things to me that are intended to be hurtful or manipulative, right? And that's just one boundary. There's a ton of different boundaries. The same when somebody asks me to do something, even if I have time, is that how I want to spend my time? Because my yes is a no to something else. So what's more important, saying yes to that person, that task, that favor, or saying yes to me or to my family or to my friends? And so boundaries are incredibly important to allow you to show up with your full energy, full self, full power. And if you don't draw them, you're giving everybody a smaller version of yourself. When you do draw them, everybody gets the best version of you all the time.
I love the way you said it. My yes could be a no to another aspect of my life. And I think many listeners out here would definitely, connect with this aspect. But I have a follow-up question
Mhm.
for these boundaries. For some, it is quite evident that they can understand where and how to set boundaries. Can you help our listeners to understand, if they are not sure how to set boundaries, how do they get started or how do they even realize that boundaries are needed?
I think the very first thing is to recognize how you're feeling. And so are you completing a task, going to an event, staying work at late, going to a party, I don't know, with resentment? Are you excited to be there or are you really wishing you were somewhere else? Are you doing that task for work with resentment? Are you upset? You need a boundary because that shouldn't be, it doesn't have to be, I should say it that way. It doesn't have to be how you feel. Um, and so I think doing the very first thing I would say, if you think that you're in the point where you need to draw some more boundaries, is spend a week being very aware of how you feel. So are you saying yes and inside you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Are you staying late at work for the fifth time this week and you're bitter about it? Right? Are you upset about something that you're missing? Are you just exhausted? Constantly exhausted. Just be aware of how you are feeling and take note of that. At the end of each day or when you have some time, just jot that down, those areas where you're feeling that. And those are the areas that you need to go into and really consider a boundary because you don't have to feel that way. Life doesn't have to be lived that way. So when you experience those things, that's your inner self yelling at you that something needs to change. So awareness is the very, very first step in figuring out what kind of boundaries need to be drawn and where in your life. I think that's the first thing they need to do.
Absolutely. I think this is very helpful, and I'm pretty sure our listeners would benefit from this tip that you have mentioned. Now, before we wrap up, one last question.
Mhm.
Drawing from your own experiences, what is that one insight or enduring truth you wish more professionals would embrace as they navigate their career journeys?
I think so many people feel like if they don't love their life, their career, the balance they have or lack thereof, they feel like they have to burn it all down. Like they feel like they have to change everything for any change to happen. You don't have to burn it all down to begin again. You can rebuild your life, restructure your life one small aligned decision at a time. And that's what I really work with on my clients is encouraging them to not change a thing about what their life actually is, but how they're going about living it. And so turning intention into action, micro, very small shifts at a time in ways that actually fit your life. And I help them to love the life they have right now. Then you have the option of making bigger changes if you want to. You don't need a new life. You need a new way of living the one that you have. That's where you start. And when you start there, everything changes.
I think that's a very powerful way to end this discussion. And so many professionals, I definitely say, chase external validation without pausing to ask what truly fulfills them. And
Yes,
what I truly appreciate about what you emphasized on is that our journeys don't have to mirror anyone else. And I believe our listeners will definitely walk away reflecting on their own definition of success. So, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your expertise uh, and your vision for working professionals. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on my show, and I'm sure many listeners will find your insights both inspiring and grounding.
absolutely. It's been a pleasure being here. And can I offer your listeners something?
I would love to, please.
Yeah. So if they are not sure where to start, I
Mm-hmm.
created something that's called the Unstoppable You Assessment. I'm not sure if I gave you that link, but I can send it your way. And it's a really easy way to find out a lot of what we've been talking about, where their leaks are, where they struggle, and it can help them be intentional with those micro shifts. And it's totally free. It takes you just a few minutes. And at the end of it, it will give you your results right then and there and some
Mm-hmm.
guidance as to where to go from there. So if they're totally lost as to where to even start, that tool can help kind of narrow that down and to get some clarity on where they can be making those micro shifts that can have a massive difference in their life. So I'll send that your way. If they would like to take it, they're more than welcome to. And like I said, you get results right then. So you can kind of have an idea as to where to go from there.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the offer. I'll
You're
definitely
welcome.
update it in the episode description. I'm pretty sure the listeners will definitely benefit from it. And to everyone listening, I hope this episode encourages you to create your own definition of success, one that brings you joy, purpose, and peace. Until next time, as Megan says, stay aligned, keep redefining your success on your own terms. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.